Now what, for example, as we debated on the floor, what if you had some rare disease by which you had to go to a cancer research something, and you didn't want anybody to know about it? Or on the more risque side, if you had Superstore lingerie, Los Angeles, what would that be giving in terms of private information for the people of Hawaii? So just on those grounds alone, I think it's anti-American, even though there's an attempt to get to the tax and the money issue because there's a deficit. It goes over the line, it goes overboard. I don't know about the people in Maui, but the people in my district in Hawaii, Kalama Valley, I don't think they want anything to do with anything like that.
Yeah, and it's important for the viewers to know too is that theoretically we're all supposed to be paying use tax anyway when we purchase goods outside of the state.
I bet nobody knows about that though.
And a lot of people don't, but I mean, to be truly honest about it, you know, you're supposed to pay. You're supposed to pay a 4% tax. So this bill was a measure and a way to get the vendors to report on, you know, basically tattletaling on you and telling the state they bought these following goods and services. But the whole thing about it is, where is that information going to be kept and stored? I mean, we looked at the whole issue of privacy of the UH Manoa recently, where we had somebody who hacked into the computer and stole a lot of confidential information about UH grads and people who interact with the University of Hawaii system. And that was a big snafu. And, you know, so these are concerns. You know, every time we start giving out our private information and it has to be stored somewhere, how is that going to be stored? How is that information going to be protected? So, you know, I agree with you, Gene. I have some real issues on privacy concerns with that.
I mean, as a policeman, you had to read people their rights. You had to respect their privacy. A lot of the stuff that you saw as a policeman must be comparable to what we're doing now at the state level for economics. Speaking of economics, and you mentioned, or I mentioned actually, the liquor tax that has just come about. I want to relate to you that Roy Yamauchi of Roy's Restaurant came in, as well as Tom Jones from Gyotako. And in the finance committee, they said, guys, don't do this. It's going to hurt what already are down sales on alcohol. Alcohol is probably the thing that they can make money on versus restaurant food pricing is sometimes very competitive. And what was asked to those two gentlemen was what you said earlier. Would you rather have a liquor tax or a GET tax? Would you, George, rather eat cat food or would you rather eat dog food? What bad choices are you being given by this? Exactly. You want a liquor tax or you want a GET tax? And that's representing how serious some of the people have come to the point where there's nothing but a GET tax left on the table.
Absolutely, and you know, it's you know, we go back to like the liquor tax. How does that affect the visitor industry and visitor spending? You know, we start looking at car rentals, for example, the surcharges that we're charging now for car rentals, up to $3 a day, and now extending that. It was a law that sunsetted now, and I believe it's going to continue on forever and ever now. There were some other measures in there that really tried to say, well, we're putting this on the tourists, but basically you got to remember that, you know, people from the neighbor islands come to Oahu to conduct business. So it also hits our local residents as well. A lot of neighbor island residents come and vacation on Oahu or visit family on Oahu or attend sporting events. So when you start adding on all these fees on everything, and it's, again, it just seems so benign, right? Just, oh, it's an extra $1 a day. Well, it's $1 a day here, and it's $1 a day, and it's $20 here. And before you know it, you start to wonder to yourself, are the people in the state of Hawaii really going to be able to afford this cost of living that we've now raised? And I've got some great concerns about it. I hope that we haven't put our families in even greater jeopardy with these additional fees. And again, I like to go back to that HawaiiStateBudgetOnline.com and have people really take a look at what the choices are and not what's being told to you. You can actually look online and you can see it and you can make your own decisions about it. You can agree or disagree on what we've selected, and we want to hear from you about it if that's the case, and we want to know why you feel it should be a certain way, this way or that way. So,
and particularly those of you on the neighbor islands who, as Representative Fontaine said, that the cost of coming to Oahu is not only going up because there's an exemption, a suspension of the exemption for Hawaiian Airlines, so the ticket price is going to go up, and the car rental is $3 a day surcharge plus $4.50 a day facilities tax. So before you even get in your car, you're going to pay $7.50 to the government. And when people come to Oahu, they're probably not going to be so prone to rent cars anymore, which reminds me of what you said about the visitor industry. In that finance committee hearing where Roy Yamauchi and Tom Jones came to say, don't raise the liquor tax, we had the Distilled Beverage Association come in and they said, you know, there's a new visitor coming to Hawaii. They get out of the airport, get their rent-a-car. Instead of going to their hotel room, they either go to Safeway or a big box, yeah, Costco, and they fill up with food and booze, and for the next week or two, they don't go out into the restaurants. This is a new cash and carry kind of visitor.
And I've seen it on Maui too. You know, in fact, we avoid now going to like Costco in the afternoon on Maui because that's when all the mainland flights come in. And if you
no kidding.
Yeah, and when you go into a Costco in the afternoon, at least on Maui, all you see is all these visitors with their leis on, pushing the cart, loading up. You know, they're buying, you know, their half gallon of tequila with their margarita mix, and they're getting all their produce and everything, and they're piling it. This has been a trend now that we're seeing where people are doing this even more and more so. So you just don't go to Costco when those flights arrive, and they usually, most of the mainland flights arrive on Maui in the afternoon. So anywhere from about 11 or 12 o'clock in the afternoon till about 3 or 4, you can't even find a parking place. It's filled with rental cars.
I mean, what a clear signal to policymakers to say, watch out for the price sensitivity of liquor and eating out, because if all of these expenses go up, that kind of a visitor, which we used to call the beer and burger, at least they were eating out, they were going to McDonald's. Now they're not even eating out, they're cooking in, and they're saving their own money. That is not a good sign. And what the caucus has tried to do, and I'll remind our listeners, the Hippocratic Oath is what doctors take when basically they're told to do no harm. What our caucus has tried to do is to apply that to do no harm to Hawaii's families, do no harm to Hawaii's jobs, and do no harm to Hawaii's economy. Unfortunately, George, it looks like we're going to be hurting some people, some families, and seeing it before our eyes as it happens. That Costco image is very, very, very vivid.
Well, you know, there was a couple of good things I have to mention that more recently that I thought were really good, and one of them was the application for granting of fiscal support for emergency relief and emergency prevention efforts in the County of Hawaii and the County of Maui, and that's especially good news. This was for the damage that occurred during the tsunami. So, you know, we did have some damage on Maui, and it was quite extensive as well in Kona from that tsunami. So the fact that we've got some aid now coming in and can help people recover is a real positive thing. And the other thing I wanted to mention too, in fact, I have a column coming out in the Maui Weekly about this, is the film tax credits. And I'm not a big tax credit fan because it's always an unknown, but in this particular instance, it's a good thing. The film industry is like one of the last two industries that we really can't expect that would come to Hawaii to do business. You know, a lot of businesses don't want to come here because of our unfriendly business environment, because of our taxes, because of the high cost of living and rent and everything else. But this is an industry that wants to take hold. They want to build a post-production facility on Maui, and that's going to create a lot of jobs. And the beautiful part about it is it sunsets after 5 years, and if the industry doesn't perform as they say they're going to, we take the credit back. So it's a win-win situation where it doesn't cost the state any money, really, and it allows us the opportunity to hopefully entice new industry to come in here to attract, like aerospace. I believe the film industry is another area that we can look at to diversify and not rely solely on tourism. If we could create Hollywood too, I think it would have a lot of impact. Exactly. A lot of money would flow into the state.
We are going to end on a positive note, but before we do that, we want to remind people that the cost of labor of government, 70% of government is basically wages and benefits. There was a promise to have a 5% decrease in labor, and we've just been recently given the HDEA contract that sets a high water mark in terms of time by which public employees are given. The latest numbers are that 21 days of vacation matched with 21 days of sick leave and then 13 holidays. We've since the HDA learned that there's actually 9 days of compensated pay to add to that, so it's a total of 64 days. Today we were talking to the media and they said 64 days for the government worker, we get 10 days vacation and 8 days sick leave. But then they said, did you know that if you give blood, you can get a day off? If you're in emergency preparedness, you can do a day off. If you're in a time custody. So who knows what we can afford now in terms of the government contracts? Because within that also is the, quote, most favored nation, which means, George, you get a good deal, I got to get a good deal. Everybody in the room has got to follow what is the best. And right now, the University of Hawaii Public Professional Union has the best. So I'm concerned that being able to afford all of these is contingent upon, and this is where I want to go back into the positive note, is a growing economy. And that's the one thing we haven't done. We haven't grown our economy. We haven't created jobs. We threw the green jobs under the bus, the bill that was going to put a solar on every roof. I'm so disappointed with that bill. We could have had it funded where it goes on your roof, then it's amortized over 20 years through your property taxes. I'm still heartsick over that. There's so much we can be doing to get rid of that $7 billion of petroleum imports. Having said that, the aerospace industry is the other bright, shining light in the economy. The point about the film industry, I think, is people love to come to Hawaii, and if we can get them in the studio, where about 90% of movies are made nowadays with those shots on the outside. In fact, they can be in the studio and they got the screens on the back, and it looks like they're actually there up on the top of the mountain or in the desert. Those things with space tourism or having a lunar park on the Big Island. NASA is literally in love with Hawaii. The way that Mauna Kea simulates the moon and the space settlements that are coming down. So I'm really excited about what we're doing in aerospace, what we're doing in the film industry, and hopefully what we can do for small businesses on Maui and all over the state of Hawaii. Any closing comments as we near our wrap-up?
Well, for the viewers, we are filming this about 2 weeks out from the end of the session, and we've been working hard. We're about to go into conference and to take a look at some of these measures, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I'm hoping that we're going to come up with some good things yet to come, and we'll be able to come back on here in a couple of weeks and talk about some success stories that we've had in terms of good legislation that will really help people. You know, help people through the foreclosure process, that will help people lower their cost of living. I just hope and I have faith that we'll come up with something. We'll be able to hopefully come up with some solutions.
A couple more weeks on May 5, it's all over with. And on May 5, between now and then, we welcome your feedback. Representative George Fontaine and Representative Jean Ward. If you ring us or you email us or go onto the website, particularly to go back to where this budget does not need a GT tax increase. It's on www, Hawaii State Budget Online. It asks you to give us your input. It asks you to balance the budget. You can do it. It's easy. It's difficult, though, to have, without your feedback, our decisions without that. So thank you for viewing. We appreciate it. And this is Better Government, hoping to be a better government each day, each week that we are here. Thank you, and aloha.